Hey everyone, and welcome to the MMQB TV. I'm Albert Breer. On my left from the Dan Patrick Show and the host of the Against the Grain podcast, Andrew Perloff.
Great show.
And former Jets and Ravens linebacker and current co-host on CMB on WFAN in New York, Bart Scott.
That's a mouthful.
There you go. 1/8 of the 2019 season is over. And there's a lot to get to, so let's get started right here in New York, where the Giants have taken the reins from Eli Manning and handed them over to rookie quarterback Daniel Jones. So Bart, other than the bell tolling on the radio show, what were you hearing from Giants fans on the move to go to Daniel Jones here?
Well, relief.
Yeah.
And also appreciation for Eli all at the same time. But also anger a little bit towards the regime. You know, Gettleman sold us that this team was better off, that you can sell off, Odell Beckham as we watch him look great on Monday Night Football. But don't worry, you got Jabril Peppers. He's a first-round draft pick. We got him as well. He hasn't flashed yet. And you're looking at maybe this is a desperation move to try and get that light off of them and get the expectations off of them and say, hey, look, this is our new shiny toy. He can play. We're going to build around Daniel Jones. Let's show you how good he is early on. Well, the fans are saying, well, why did you do this in week 2? If that's the case, then you should have got Eli Manning off the roster in the offseason. You should have traded him, see if you could get something for him. But better yet, you could have got the $25 million off of the books, and we could have went and spent that on a Preston Smith or a Zadarius Smith or some of the good pass rushers that we need to improve this defense, because that's the biggest void on this team.
And got the practice reps for Daniel Jones, too. Maybe he'd be a little more, even more prepared now than he is otherwise. I think Bart raises an interesting point there, in that, like, one way to gain job security is to show like our program has promise, and there's no better way to show your program has promise than to have a young, promising quarterback in there. That's the point you're getting to. I think what's interesting about this, Andrew, I think it's an acknowledgement from Gettleman and Shermer that they're still not there yet.
Oh, yeah.
And I think part of this has to do with Daniel Jones himself and his development. They like where he's at. Part of it has to do with the work they've done on the offensive line. They feel comfortable putting him behind a group that might have gotten him killed last year. A lot better this year. But I do think another piece of this, a third piece of this, is where they are in building the program up. Right. And they know they're not there yet. If you don't need to be in win-now mode, if you look up and you see Dallas and Philly and say, we're not really that close to that right now, then it makes sense to get the young quarterbacks to work.
As you guys acknowledge, the defense really needs help. Can any casual fan who's not in New York name anyone in that front seven? I mean, this is a defensive line that used to have the Strahans of the world. And, I like the Olivier Vernon trade, but you have nobody there to rush passer, as Janoris Jenkins so kindly pointed out the other day.
Burping the baby.
I agree with Bart. If you didn't have the defense and you knew it because you didn't have the names there, you should have gotten rid of Eli in the offseason. I think sentimentality played a role. I loved what I saw of Daniel Jones in the preseason. It reminded me of Dak Prescott's first preseason. Yeah. So I'm optimistic with the move.
Okay, so what should we expect from Jones and the Giants going forward? Where do you think this leaves Eli, Bart?
Well, oddly enough, it's amazing how the utilization rate of Saquon Barkley has been super low, but the productivity has been high. I wonder if they were doing that because they were trying to save Saquon Barkley from getting the Le'Veon Bell treatment, where it looks like he's not maybe going to even make it through a full 16 games with the amount of hits that he's taken. But it seems like a lot of Saquon will be in the equation when you want to bring in a young quarterback and you want to have that play action, safe throws. We did see in the preseason that Daniel Jones is willing to push the ball down the field. Yeah. I think in a couple of weeks when they get Golden Tate back, when Shepard's out of the protocol, and you have a full complement of Saquon Barkley in the game plan, I think you can play better, and that's all they want to show. They want to show incremental signs of improvement and take those baby steps so that they can secure their job for next season.
And I like it. I think what you're getting at, right, like sort of what Zeke Elliott was for Dak Prescott, what Todd Gurley was for Jared Goff. Maybe that's what Saquon Barkley can be for Daniel Jones. Okay, another team in the midst of change is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger is out for the year with a bad elbow. Bart, how can the Steelers survive after losing Big Ben?
Trade for Eli. Win-win, right? Rooney's, Maris. But they made an aggressive trade that says that they're going to attempt to win. They made the trade for Mika Fitzpatrick, giving up a first-round draft pick from a guy in his second year. Now, they'll probably have control for him for the next 3 years. But they understand in Blitzburg, it starts and begins with the defense. And if they're going to do that, they're going to have to play possession football, limit the possessions, go back to the old school days when they had Cordell Stewart before they had a superstar quarterback that can throw the ball 50 times and lead you down the field. I'm concerned with Ben's future because he's late in his career. He's hinted at retirement. We don't really know what this is. We don't know if this is Tommy John. We don't know what type of elbow injury it is. The last time we've seen something like this severe, it was Carson Palmer who elected not to get the surgery. And then he also battled that for the rest of his career. Can Ben come back and be that, that transition player? Or do they move on from Ben and get a boatload of money back in return and be able to spend on other key pieces and start with a young quarterback?
And so here are two pieces that I look at.
Yep.
Andrew, number one, they are aging in certain spots. Now, they're still young at receiver. They've still got some young pieces on defense. But you look at it, and Stephon Tuitt's getting a little older. Cam Hayward's getting a little older. And you look at that offensive line. Marquise Pouncey's now in his 10th year. Alejandro Villanueva, their left tackle, is now in his 30s. DeCastro is getting a little bit older. And so there are a lot of pieces on that roster where you look at it and you say, they're like, that window might not be what it was a couple years ago. So on one end you've got that, and now you're throwing Mason Rudolph into the mix. Like how do you see Mason Rudolph fitting everything that's going on around there? Because I think they've sort of got to turn back into the old school Steelers now.
Right. But it's a little baffling that they would risk giving up that draft pick when they have question marks at quarterback. That could be a draft pick that you use on a quarterback. So Mason Rudolph, famously tall with small hands, we don't know. I like Mason Rudolph.
Proper hands?
Yeah, I like Mason Rudolph despite his small hands. You got to say that. Whatever you mentioned, Mason Rudolph. But I do like they have three young pieces on defense: Minkah Fitzpatrick, Devin Bush, and who's their third young piece? T.J. Watt. Yeah. So they have a really, it's like old school. They have to redefine themselves, but that's a big risk in today's NFL to not be a passing team. When you've been a passing team, what is it, a decade now?
Right.
Since you were playing them, they've been a real aerial team. It makes me really nervous.
It's got to be like the Tommy Maddox Steelers.
Yeah, he threw a lot too. Yeah,
that's what it's got to be. It's going to be the Tommy Maddox.
I mean, they really thought they thought that they could replace Le'Veon Bell and Connor, who's not had the season that he's had before, and they thought they could replace AB, and they're starting to see that it's not about Juju being Juju. It's about Moncrief and the guys behind in Washington being Juju and being a second guy. They don't have a second guy, so it's easy to take them away in the game plan.
Moncrief, what a disappointment he has been. That's been a big problem.
He can run routes. He looks good. Can't catch. Catch. That's kind of a big part of the job.
Yeah.
The Saints are in a similar situation after losing Drew Brees for at least the next 6 weeks. Andrew, how can Teddy Bridgewater keep the Saints afloat until Brees gets back?
Can we just say Teddy Bridgewater / Taysom Hill? Is that how we're going to do it here?
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. So Teddy Bridgewater, it's a similar situation as Steelers. I think
gumbo for Eli.
I think the Saints need to redefine themselves a little bit and become more of a possession team. Run Alvin Kamara. Now I know Mark Ingram's not there. That'd be nice if he was. A little Latavius Murray, big guy, and this is going to be unpopular. I know a lot of people don't like it, but they're going to run some Taysom Hill and a Wildcat, huge guy. So I think they slow the game down, kind of like Teddy was in Minnesota, because he didn't throw that much in Minnesota. So he could be efficient, more of a game manager type. That's how they have to win here.
I mean, they're going to have to, run the ball and take shots with Teddy. Teddy's, the knock on Teddy early on when he was in Minnesota was that he wouldn't push the ball down the field. He was more of a check down Charlie type of guy. They're going to have to run and lean on his defense, who's can be a top defense. You think about Jordan and you think about all the pieces that they have over there. But they have a tremendous weapon in their kicker as well. So they're going to have to play the ugly game, win games ugly. The problem is they got the Seattle Seahawks this week, who created the ugly way of winning, running the ball and pounding you on defense and trying to beat you with their special teams.
I'm going to give you guys a silver lining. If they can split the next two games, Seattle and Dallas, I think there's a good chance they get to 5-3 because I think they can easily go 3-1 in the next 4 after that. Then they get the bye. Then Brees comes back November 10th. I don't think it's impossible to think, based on the way that Brees sort of tailed off a little bit at the end of last year, maybe they wind up saving some miles on Brees' body. Where maybe he's better in November and December because he got this natural break.
The dead arm.
In the middle of the year, right?
Yep.
And then maybe they're more prepared for the stretch drive than they were last year. It's going to take, I think, splitting one of the next 2 games and then going 3-1 in the 4 after that. But I think it's doable. I do think it's doable.
You just have to be careful that Atlanta doesn't run away with the division. They seem to be struggling trying to find their way as well. So Carolina's dealing with the same thing that you're dealing with. So you should be okay.
You might have a little wiggle room there. Okay. Speaking of other teams in the division, one more injured quarterback for you this week is Cam Newton. He's got a bad foot. Are the Panthers going to have to deal with a less than 100% Newton from here on out? I think it's a fair question because last year he had the shoulder. Now you've got the foot. It seems like this is one of these, And I think we saw this with Ben at one point in his career. It's always something.
And also, too, it's confidence with
Yeah.
Cam. That's my big concern. Is he the same quarterback that he was in 2015? Forget the physical stuff. He just looks like he's questioning himself at times, like he doesn't know what he wants to do. That's really my biggest problem. I'm really worried that it's going to take a while for him to get back on track.
It's called accumulation, right? You can be Superman when you're young, but those hits, no matter how big you are, how much faster you are than everybody, they always catch up with you. I saw this when playing with the late, great Steve McNair. Just the body just can't recover anymore, and you're becoming immortal, and you're not used to it. So Cam's body won't give him the performance that he's asking it for, and he's overcompensating because he's pressing. And, you know, what happens is the injuries just continue to build up, and he's going to have to, you know, change his game, much like Randall Cunningham did late in his career. You can't be a guy that's exposing yourself and going and doing these powers and all those type of things anymore. Everybody's human.
I mean, I just think, like, I don't know. I look at this and I think they're asking him to rewire a little bit who he is as a football player because they know he can't last this way. Ben was a name I mentioned a minute ago. They did that with Todd Haley. It took a little while to get him and turn him into a little bit more of a point guard where he played like a power forward early in his career. And I think that's what Cam's going through. And I think one of you guys hit on, there's a little self-doubt there.
Yeah.
Like learning to play a new way after you've done it one way for so long and you've been able to physically overwhelm everybody for such a long time. It's difficult. I mean, Bart, as a player, it's difficult to just kind of rewire who you are.
Well, they're getting faster and you're getting slower and older. And the league always replenishes with young, exciting, dynamic athletes, and they only getting faster. And now the things that he used to get away with, he can't get away with. We saw this with Michael Vick. You know, the Michael Vick that played in Philadelphia and played for the Jets was nowhere near the type of athlete and create the separation in the angles. So Cam's going to have to adjust and adapt now, or it's going to be too late. We're going to see him get hurt because he's going to revert to what he's always done.
Okay, we got more on the Steelers. Here's our own Ryan Aselta with the Pittsburgh Tribune Review's Joe Rutter.
All right, thanks, guys. The first 2 weeks of the season have been rather unkind to the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 losses and a season-ending injury to quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. So what do the Steelers do from here? Let's welcome in Joe Rutter of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review for some insight, and he joins us from just outside the Steelers facility. And Joe, let's start with the news on Ben Roethlisberger is going to undergo season-ending surgery for that injured elbow. What details can you give us on the injury and the prospective recovery time for Big Ben?
Well, we don't know for sure. You know, they just said in a statement that it's going to be, you know, right elbow surgery and out for the year. So, you know, it's obviously not just a general little cleanup because he would be back in a few weeks or a month. So I guess, you know, you have to look at the possibility of, you know, the UCL, which is Tommy John surgery. Now, nobody's come out and said that, but I think you can surmise by the fact he's out for the season that is likely what it is. And, you know, that would lead to indications that he would be ready, you know, by next training camp heading into at least the 2020 season.
Yeah, with not much information out there right now, does it lead you to believe that it is a pretty serious elbow injury?
For him not to come back and, you know, play this season, yeah, it would lead you to believe that. Now, Ben Roethlisberger was at the facility today. He did not speak to reporters, but he didn't have anything on his shoulder, didn't have anything on his elbow. He was walking fine. You know, so, I mean, surgery will be obviously later in this week. But, you know, for him, who's a pretty tough guy and, like, you know, wants to be there with his team, you know, for him not to, you know, to shut it down for the rest of the year means it's pretty significant.
37 years old, Joe. Is there any sentiment in Pittsburgh that this could be the end for Ben Roethlisberger?
I think it's a logical question. I mean, you know, they've got Mason Rudolph here that's going to start this week. You know, they drafted him for this possibility. You know, people thinking that obviously it would be later down the line. But, you know, when you're that age, you'll be 38 when he comes back. You know, at that late of his career, you just don't know if he's going to have it. So I think the Steelers, you know, and especially fans around here are kind of bracing for the fact that this is going to be Mason Rudolph's team from now on.
Yeah, you kind of alluded to that. At some point, the franchise was going to need to transition and move on from Roethlisberger. Any sense that the injury almost gives the team, Mike Tomlin, the front office, a bit of an out and a reason to now look ahead to the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll have to, you know, to plot out a course for the next few years because of this. I mean, I don't think there's any guarantees you can have that a 38-year-old quarterback's going to come back and play at the same level he did before his injury. So I think a lot of things are going to change. You know, they've got a lot of money tied up in cap space with Ben Roethlisberger's contract and with Antonio Brown, 2 guys that aren't going to be playing anymore for them this season. So, they've got to figure some things out there as well.
A year ago, the Steelers used that third-round draft pick on quarterback Mason Rudolph out of Oklahoma State. What's the feeling on Rudolph inside the walls of the Steelers headquarters?
Well, I think in the front office especially, the feelings are pretty high on Mason Rudolph. They had a first-round grade on him when they drafted him, which is why they traded up in the third round to get him last year. I think the teammates are encouraged by what he can bring. They saw him get off to a decent start playing the second half against Seattle, and they're saying all the right things right now and rallying around him. Now, granted, a lot of the players are still in shock because they didn't expect to lose their quarterback for the season, but they had a chance to work with Mason Rudolph. He was here all last year as the number 3, moved up to the number 2, and I think they like what he brings. It's just they're going to have to probably scale down the playbook a little bit and put in some more plays that are more friendly to him as opposed to what Ben Roethlisberger's used to calling.
You mentioned the guys in the locker room. I know they've gotten the news. You've had a chance to talk with some of them. Overall, how down was the mood in the Steelers locker room?
I'm sure inwardly they're very down and concerned. Outwardly, they tried to put on a good face and a brave front and say that everything's going to be okay. But, really, it's been 16 years since Ben Roethlisberger came in the third game of his rookie season and replaced Tommy Maddox that the Steelers have been in this kind of situation. Every veteran in that locker room has played with Ben Roethlisberger as his quarterback. So it's going to be a big adjustment for this team. And really, with an 0-2 start, now you're looking at a prospect of a bad season. And, they're trying to hold it together. But, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out with the young guy going in there and, the Steelers trying to they already didn't have a great offense as it was the first 2 games. Now they've got a rookie trying to help them get out of this mess.
Yeah, long road ahead of them. Joe Rutter of the Pittsburgh Tribune review all over the Steelers and the Ben Roethlisberger injury. Joe, thanks for being with us.
Sounds good. Anytime, guys.
All right, now let's send it back over to Albert, Andrew, and Bart.
And now it's the return of everyone's favorite segment. That's Andrew Perloff's 3-step drop. Andrew, take it away.
All right, guys, we're going to assume the Dolphins get the number 1 pick in next year's draft. Let's figure out who's going to be number 2. And I'm going to start with a team that is near and dear to your heart, Bart. How about the New York Jets as a possibility to sort of tank and be a high draft pick?
I know things don't look great now, but assuming that Sam Darnold eventually comes back and C.J. Mosley comes back, you saw the effect that he has on the team. I know right now for the next couple of weeks it's going to look tough. They have the Eagles, they have the Patriots twice coming up in the near future. But then when you get to about week 9, it eases up as you have the Dolphins, you have the Giants, Redskins, Oakland, Bengals, Miami Dolphins again, and you end with the Bengals. So I think they can win 6 games at least.
What if they really fall apart in the first half? Do you think there's any chance Sam Darnold that they would be careful, with the enlarged spleen and keep him out, and C.J. Mosley, and play cautious and maybe say let's wait a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you what, I can see that going that route, having that as game plan, because you don't want to risk your future, especially knowing that if his spleen can burst, you don't know how stable that spleen is, and chronic fatigue is usually what comes with that. I had a teammate in college that had mono, and he suffered with it for almost a year as far as chronic fatigue coming back and forth. We don't know how Sam's going to react. So if the season's a loss, I would definitely not play Sam, but I just think the team as a whole is too talented to be top 5.
Yeah.
I'd be a little concerned, Andrew.
Yeah.
What I saw on Monday night was not good.
Offensively wasn't good.
Beyond just being and look, I think the defense is fine. I think Greg Williams did a nice job with that group, but offensively they looked disorganized and they looked uninspired. And that's what scares me a little bit is you're coming off of a home opener where you blew a 16-0 lead. You've been outscored 40-3 in the 6 quarters since. Mm-hmm. And so if you're already there, right, and you look at their next 4 games, like Bart said, Patriots twice, Eagles, Cowboys, there's a good chance you're going to be 0-6. If you're already having these issues at 0-2, what is it going to look like at 0-6? And so that's and I think it's a challenging situation for Adam Gase because I don't think that team gave him a great effort on Monday night. And if you've got effort issues in week 2, I think that there could be something bigger afoot. I'm not ruling them out of being somewhere there in the top 5.
See, where you see effort issues, I see confusion. I see a need to simplify. I see an offensive line that hasn't played with each other, that's veterans, that we know that the sums are greater than what the whole has been doing as a group. Individually, those are players that should be a lot better than that. But the teams have been crowding the line. They're having a lot of miscommunication problems. I think Adam Gase is just going to have to simplify the offense to allow them to play fast. He said as much, or hinted at that and look at it.
What about Jamal Adams' situation? Is there any chance that causes some friction, chemistry, locker room?
Jamal's a pro. Jamal's a pro. We had him on the show today. He's a guy that plays with his hair on fire. He was a little disappointed because he got the 2 penalties at the end of the game. They took him off the field.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because he wasn't trying to. He was trying to finish, and he was trying to make a play, and he's the guy that's going to play with his hair on fire all the way to the end. So I think that's something that's going to have to be ironed out because he is the unquestioned leader of that defense.
Okay, next team, Cincinnati Bengals. Offensive line decimated with injuries.
Wow, you are saying the Bengals?
Well,
would be
I'm being realistic
next-
here. The offensive line injuries are unbelievable.
Yep.
But who cares about that? They had the worst defense in the league last year, and they didn't really do anything to address it. They let up a ton of points to the 49ers on the road. It seems like Zach Taylor is a promising young coach, but you look at the pieces around there, and A.J. Green is never healthy. Is this a team that could be in the top 5 discussion?
I think they're going to be a little bit better than that. I think that this is going to be, on a week-to-week basis, a pretty competitive team. I know it didn't look good against San Francisco, but they went into Seattle. I thought the play calling was creative.
Dalton looked great.
You see what they've been able to get out of Dalton through 2 weeks. John Ross, who looked like they were ready to
Change
put
the number.
They were ready to put John Ross, like just have him sit out on the sidewalk for somebody to pick up, right? Now all of a sudden it looks like he can play. I still think that there's talent on that roster part, and I still think that this isn't a playoff team. But could I see them getting to 6-10 or 7-9? I could see that, and that would put them firmly out of the mix for the second pick.
It's just weird for me because I don't know who we're going to replace in that group, right? Because I look at, we thought Arizona was going to be a team that was going to be there. They look like they could be competitive going on the road and really giving Baltimore all they can handle and falling short. You look at the Lions. The Lions are better than what we thought. So it's weird. I don't think we're going to have these teams that's 2-14, 2-14 or 3-13. I think we're going to have like the top of the draft is going to be guys that, maybe lose 4 games. I think.
With Miami as exception.
Yeah, with Miami as exception. Yeah.
Okay, one more team I wanted, a couple more teams actually throw.
Are the Dolphins bad?
Yeah.
Man,
The Denver Broncos are 0-2. They have a lot of veteran pieces, but I look at that team. That is a very flawed team. Their offensive line is holding at a record pace. Garrett Bowles cannot stop holding. I don't know. Mike Munchak is not helping him. Flacco hasn't done anything yet. And the defense, at a certain point, and I saw last year, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, it's become less effective. This seems like a formula, like, wait, where is Denver going? Are they going to want to be in a position to draft a quarterback?
yeah.
I think it's possible they draft a quarterback.
Again.
I don't know if they'll be drafting that high. I mean, the nice thing is they rolled the dice on Drew Lock, but he was a second-round pick. So we've seen before where teams have taken guys in the second round, turn around the next year, and taken a guy in the first round. The Panthers would be an example of that. They took Jimmy Clausen in 2010, drafted Cam Newton in 2011. So we've seen that before. I still think that there's frontline talent on the defensive side of the ball that's going to keep them in games. And the offensive line's a problem and has been a problem, and it's even more of an issue now because they've invested in it, in drafting guys high, and it's still not working out. Signing Juwan James, drafting Garrett Bowles, drafting Dalton Risner, it still doesn't look right. I don't know that they're going to be that bad. Like, I don't know that they're going to be like second pick in the draft bad, but I don't think they're going to be in the race. I think they'll be a competitive team on a week-to-week basis because Vic Fangio's there and because he does have some pieces to work with on defense.
It's weird because I'm trying to find a team that's going to be worse than Denver because I look at Washington. I love the way that they compete. They've been in every game. And AP is going to give you all that you handle. That defensive line is ferocious. Eventually Haskins is going to get in there. We're going to see.
But that defense has been broken. They've had trouble with deep balls. Like maybe what if they go to Haskins and the defense isn't fixed? Are they in the mix for the number 2?
I mean, they could potentially be in the mix. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like maybe them, Broncos, Miami. But everybody else is tough to kind of predict. Where they're going
Giants
to fall.
we talked about earlier.
Well, the Giants as well.
Yeah.
But Arizona. I don't know. Arizona looks like a team that can get hot.
Arizona looks frisky, man. Like they may not win a lot of games, but it looks like they've got the ability. When you put them in 2-minute situations, Kyler turns into a different player.
Yeah.
And so like it feels like Arizona at least is going to be competitive,
And
right?
you know they're going to get Patrick Peterson back, so they got reinforcements.
Yeah.
They got defensive reinforcements, and now
Terrell Suggs got a little
They
left.
give Suggs
Yeah.
and give Chandler Jones a
Yeah.
little bit more action, the opportunity. Because the quarterback's going to have to hold on to the ball. This is going to be interesting. This is one of the most interesting questions you ever brought up here because I really don't have a clear answer. I can maybe think of 3. I can't think of 5.
It's just like, it's a good thing for the league. I don't know that there are very many great teams this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's like that train wreck. Like it's just Miami is, but like
that's
beyond
on
that,
purpose.
like Tampa looks better. They were bad last year. Like you look at some of the teams that were really just teetering, like San Francisco, the second pick in the draft. They've got Jimmy back. They look like they're better. Like there's just like you look at the bad teams from last year, and they're maybe not quite as bad as they were.
Right, but injuries, we see how many injuries do the Jets have already. If they lose,
Right.
if they keep losing guys at this pace, an
Yeah, no
injury
doubt.
team could end up 2 or 3,
And that's-
just like San Francisco did last year. So.
Right, and that's always the equalizer.
Yeah.
Injuries, no question.
All
about it.
right.
All right. Okay, thanks, Andrew. We're going to take a break from football reality right now and take a look into the world of fantasy football with our own expert, Bill Enright.
Hey everyone, this is Bill Enright, Sports Illustrated fantasy football analyst with your Stardom Situm for week number 3. Let's start off with the quarterbacks, the passers. I have 3 of them I want to talk about. The first is taking the league by storm with his Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott. 674 yards, 7 touchdowns in the first 2 games, and boy does he have a juicy matchup against that dreadful Dolphins defense in week number 3. A Buffalo Bills quarterback, Josh Allen, back-to-back games with a rushing touchdown. We love those kind of stats from our quarterback from a fantasy football perspective, and he has a minimum of 250 yards in week 1 and week 2. Next up, Jameis Winston from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's taken on a really bad New York Giants defense. 10 days rest since he was playing on Thursday Night Football. Look for him to continue to click with wide receiver Chris Godwin. Over to the running back position where Mark Ingram had a really big day in week 1, but he let managers down in week 2 with just 8 points in the non-PPR format. Look for Ingram to get back on track as he plays the Chiefs, who just gave up 99 yards to the Oakland Raiders rookie running back Josh Jacobs. 2 running backs from the San Francisco 49ers backfield, Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert, 283 total yards in week 2 from this 49ers backfield. The Seahawks, their opponent, the Seahawks backs gained 152 yards against the Niners' week 3 opponent, that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Moving on to wide receivers were Marquise Hollywood Brown, 233 yards in his first 2 games of NFL action. That is tied for the 3rd most receiving yards in NFL history for a player's 2 games of his career. Fire up Hollywood Brown against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 3. I talked about his quarterback. Now I'm talking about Randall Cobb, the wide receiver who is going to elevate his game now that Michael Gallup is out of action. The Cowboys are rolling. They're playing against a terrible Dolphins defense. And through 2 games, Cobb has 9 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. Let's talk about some tight ends. O.J. Howard of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 0.0 in week 2. But don't worry, folks. Bruce Arians did not forget about this special playmaker. He'll get plenty of action against a terrible Giants defense in week 3. Let's move over to the sit-ems, the guys that you want out of your lineups for this week. I'm benching Cam Newton, Mitch Trubisky, and I'm not even thinking about either of the backups for Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, or Drew Brees, Teddy Bridgewater. Over to running backs, Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon. He's clearly bothered by this ankle injury, and you know what? He's got a tough matchup against a Buffalo Bills defense that is really doing a good job stopping the opposition's run game. Another player that I'm going to bench this week is Adrian Peterson. I'm sorry, but his explosion, his power, his quickness, it's all gone. He averaged just 2.5 yards per carry in week number 2, and if not for the touchdown, Peterson would have finished with just under 3 points for his week 2 performance. Wide receivers, Jamison Crowder. Hey, what happened to this guy? He led all players with 14 catches in week 1, but he totally disappeared in week 2 when Crowder only caught less than 3 times the amount of catches. He wasn't involved in the passing attack, and now the Jets are starting Luke Falk at quarterback. Not Sam Darnold, not Trevor Siemian, Luke Falk. Crowder went from 14 catches for 99 yards in week 1 to 4 for 40 in week 2. It's just not consistent enough. 2 more wide receivers that I want out of the lineups. It's the Philadelphia Eagles' top playmakers in Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. Even if they are active, I think they're at major risk of aggravating those soft muscle tissue injuries, and I don't want another zero in their lineup like they got us last week. For tight ends, I'm talking about Green Bay Packers tight end Jimmy Graham, who has just 3 catches in 2 games. If he didn't score a touchdown in the first game of the year, he wouldn't even be on fantasy teams at this point. That is your start and sit for week number 3. Best of luck in your matchups.
All right, guys, let's get into our way too early picks that we will not be held to. After 2 weeks, Bart Scott leads the way at 5-3. Andrew, me and you, we got a little work to do, especially me if you look up at that board. Week 3 kicks off in Jacksonville when the Jaguars host the Tennessee Titans. The Jags are getting 1.5 at home. Andrew, who are you taking on Thursday night?
First of all, I don't want to bet this game because this game is always ugly. It's always under. That Thursday night Titans-Jaguars game.
The traditional Thursday night game. Yeah.
Tennessee is a little bit of streak here. I'm going to take the Titans, but not for a strong reason. You know, Gardner Minshew is everyone's darling, but if you watch that game closely against the Texans, he wasn't very threatening until the fourth quarter when he was able to scramble. I just think the Titans are an average team, and the Jaguars, as currently constituted, below average. I'm not really worried about the Jalen Ramsey controversy. This is a pick that I would have made regardless of that storyline.
I like the Tennessee Titans. I mean, both teams are physical, and when both teams are built alike, you go with the quarterback. And I think the difference is going to be Marcus Mariota. Not that he's a big upgrade over Minshew, but I think that he's a guy that's been in the system. He's a guy that's playing for a contract. He's a guy I believe that is going to use his legs as they try and shut down the Delaney Walkers of the world. If he catches you in cover 1, he's going to take off. So he understands how to play a professional quarterback. And I just love the physicality in which they play with.
I think, who's got their crap together? You know what I mean? I just think the Titans, look, tough loss last week to the Colts. I think that's a good Colts team. And they've got a little bit of a hex going, but they were competitive.
11-12 straight.
Yeah, they blew out the Browns in week 1. I think the Titans are a pretty decent team.
Yeah.
I think they're an 8-8, 9-7 team. And I have to think coming off the short week, the way they lost that last game on the 2-point try against Houston, and then you throw the Jalen Ramsey thing into the mix. I generally like to go with the home team on Thursday Night Football, but this week I'm going to go with the road team, the Tennessee Titans. Okay, on Sunday night, love this matchup. The Cleveland Browns get their second straight primetime appearance as they welcome in the Los Angeles Rams. Another home underdog here as the Browns are getting 2.5. Andrew, who do you like on Sunday night?
I mean, 2 weeks in a row, we've seen Baker Mayfield look confused against complicated defense, and the Rams' defense has looked awesome. I think they're going to bring it to Baker. The home field advantage, obviously, is in there because they were home week 1. I really like what I see about the Rams. It's funny because I felt like we didn't talk about the Rams enough preseason. We just assumed they'd be okay. Goff, I think, everyone expecting Goff to regress hasn't happened yet. Then they bring in Gurley as a hammer. I like the Rams to win this one big.
I tell you what, the biggest addition to the Rams is Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's the one that makes that entire offense move, being able to win early in the slot. But I was not impressed with Baker Mayfield or that offense. It's great because, they have great weapons, but they mortgage the house for those weapons because they have nothing in the garage. You talk about those, those offensive linemen. I mean, Greg Robinson, Outcast, Aaron Donald, please. I mean, I'm talking about Baker Mayfield's going to be running for his life. They're going to have to get him off a spot. You saw the Jets able to get him off his spot, but they just didn't have anybody on the opposite side away from the pressure to close the show. And I think that they're going to struggle a little bit. Freddie Kitchens has not impressed me as a head coach, and this offense has looked against a horrible Jets team with backups all over the place. Yep. They look pedestrian. I mean, without a linebacker on Odell Beckham, which I don't know why Greg Williams drew that one up. Without that one, it's a 16-3 game late in the middle of the third quarter on your third string quarterback.
I like the fight that I saw from the Rams, right? And the Browns showed some fight on Monday night, but if you look at the way the Rams scored on Sunday against the Saints, right? Cooper Kupp was running like a fullback in the open field, running through people to get to the end zone on his long touchdown. Brandon Cooks catches the ball in traffic against one of the better corners in the league, Marshawn Lattimore, on that slant for the touchdown. Todd Gurley's touchdown. He fought through contact to get there, got to the pylon.
Robert Woods is like a little mean.
And I think that team's got edge now. And I think we've thought of them as this high-flying team. But you see like the defense, and it's almost like they got like their sea legs in the Super Bowl. Like, we don't need to be carried by Sean McVay and the offense. We're our own group. And it seems that the defense really sort of has found itself and found its identity behind Wade Phillips. And the offense, like I said, I like the fight that I'm seeing. It's become a more physical team than I think it was last year. So I like their toughness, which is why I'm going to take them to win and to cover on Sunday night in Cleveland. Okay, one last home dog on prime time as the Washington Redskins take on the Chicago Bears. The Redskins are getting 4.5. Andrew, who do you like on Monday night?
Okay, so this is a little ugly. Neither team has looked great. Now, the Redskins, I think the league changed the rules so they just start in 1st and 20 now since they get holding on every single call. You know, the holding calls are out of control this season, by the way. We can get into that. They're on a record pace. Khalil Mack, you saw what Denver had to do to him. You have to hold him every play or he's going to get your quarterback. I worry about the offensive line. And the Redskins' defense has gone 2 straight weeks where they start out okay and can't get a stop. I think they're going to make Trubisky look okay. And I don't think there are many Trubisky fans around right now. And that's all the Bears need to win. I'm going to take the Bears.
I mean, you sure would love against a guy like Khalil Mack to have a all-pro left tackle.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one. But you can't use him because he's disgruntled. You got to get rid of him. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Mitch Trubisky. I think he's holding his team back, but I think his athleticism and what he brings to the table is enough to really, give a team like the Washington Redskins a lot of fits. The trick plays, a guy like Tariq Cohen, I think those are where the problems are going to come. Those guys that can make you miss in space. And eventually they're going to find a way to isolate Landon Collins and be able to try and make him protect or make him, cover in space. I just think it's going to be too much. I think, Chicago's a balanced team. Washington is a team that can come out and they play inspired football, but they can't finish. They don't have closers.
I'm a little worried about Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about what I've seen from him the last couple of weeks. And I'm with you guys as far as the matchups go. Like, I think that the Bears are a difficult matchup for any offense, but the Redskins offense in particular, the way that the Redskins have played the first couple of weeks, I just think that this is going to be close.
Sure.
Like, I think the Redskins find a way to get this game into the phone booth, play it in the phone booth. I think the Bears wind up winning, but I think the Redskins keep it close enough to cover. So that's the one home dog I'm going to take this week. I'll take the Redskins to cover in Washington on Monday night. Lastly, Andrew, what's one line you love?
Okay, so last week I sat here and I said, you know what, the Dolphins are going to show some fight. And they did for part of the game against the Patriots until Ryan Fitzpatrick started throwing it the other way. You know what? I learned my lesson. And I don't care. You can make it 22. You can make it 23, 24, 25. I'm taking the New England Patriots over the New York Jets. There's not a spread big enough from the Jets team I saw. And it's not because they don't have talent. It's because of the injuries. Yeah. I really think that the Patriots are not going to call off the dogs.
Luke Falk versus Tom Brady.
And I mean, you're looking up at that Patriots defense. They've only given up 3 points this year so far. I mean, Jamie Collins all of a sudden looks like Jamie Collins did before.
Yeah.
It's like he came back like, come on home. You see it's not, the grass isn't green on the other side. All right, I'll do what I say and do it for a low price.
No question. No question.
For me, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to lay the 4.5. I just think that Teddy Bridgewater, too quick of a transition. You give a guy like Russell Wilson, it's too many bites at the apple because you can't, move the chains. Handle the time of possession. I think they can load up against Alvin Kamara. And, Teddy doesn't push the ball down the field. He doesn't have a lot of chemistry with his receivers right now. So that adds up to a lot of punts. Play the field position game. We know how the Seattle team operates. They wear you down and they kill you in the second half. Russell Wilson's just going to be a little bit too much. So I'm going to have to lay the 4.5.
A lot on Sean Payton this week to make it work. My line for this week is the Oakland Raiders. I think have looked a little more competitive than people would have expected. They hung in with the Chiefs early on. I think that's a really good Chiefs team.
Up 10-0.
Yep, up 10-0. It's 8.5.
It's a lot.
Against the Vikings. I'm not sure that they win, but I think the Raiders find a way to cover against a Vikings team that's still sort of finding itself offensively. Kirk Cousins isn't playing great.
He's not throwing the ball.
He's not throwing the ball.
Dalvin Cook looked great week one.
Dalvin Cook looks great.
Falcons.
Dalvin Cook looks great, but I think this is a competitive Oakland team. Like, I think this is one of those teams that, like, at the end of the year, we're going to look up, and they're going to be 7-9, but they're going to have been in a lot of games, and there's going to be a lot of good experience. for a lot of the young guys in that roster that they brought in over the course of the last 18 months or so.
Josh Jacobs, man, it's a revelation. I think he'll have success in this game.
I wish Abram hadn't gotten hurt, because you look at the three first-round picks, Farrell, Abrams, and Jacobs can all play.
Because they said they were looking for guys for high character, so guys that have had adversity in their life, and they're showing you that on the football field because they're laying it all out, and you can see the appreciation for the opportunity.
Yeah.
No question, no question. Okay, that'll do it for us. You can catch us back here next and every week of the 2019 season. For Andrew Perloff and Bart Scott, I'm Albert Breer. Enjoy week 3, everyone.